Hello, my name is Mindy Taylor, and I am an accredited genealogist professional specializing in the England region. And in this video, we will be discussing the document interpretation section of the Level 2 exam. The documentation interpretation section is designed to test the candidate's knowledge of the documents from their region and their skills in working with those documents. The Level 2 written exam must be passed with a score of 90% or above in both sections, the document interpretation and the general questions. Each section is 2 hours long and open book and open internet. Some of the things that you will be asked to do in the document interpretation section are identify, find, analyze, and work with documents and prominent reference works. Extract, transcribe, abstract, and translate from a foreign language into English. Plan research using clues from documents, and know the content of documents and internet sources. So what types of questions will be asked in the document interpretation section? The test will include 8 to 10 documents, which will be the basis for performing about 9 tasks. Most questions will be short answer, but there may be some essay or multiple choice questions. Document interpretation question examples. Number 1, identify the type of document. This may be a will, a marriage record, military record, etc. Number 2, transcribe several short texts. Usually these will be about 8 to 15 lines. Number 3, translate from a foreign language into English, and these will be the same text that you transcribed. So about 8 to 15 lines. Number 4, abstract the genealogical information from a document. Number 5, develop a research plan from a document. Number 6, indicate what information you would expect to find in a document of this type. Number 7, find this document and provide its URL. So they will give you a document and they want you to find where its URL is. Number 8, build a pedigree or a family group sheet. They will be giving you 2 or 3 documents and you will fill out or create a pedigree or family group sheet from those documents. Number 9, find a document based on information that is given to you. All right, so document interpretation, question examples. This is maybe the way some of these questions will be worded. So these are just, basic examples. So what is this document, its content, and where would you find it? What clues can be found in this document, and what sources would you search next? And then use these documents to compile a family group sheet. All right, now I want to go over a really valuable resource that's on the ICAPGen website for each region, and they're called the regional resources. You go to the ICAPGen website, and under Become Accredited, you will go down to where it says Testing Regions and Regional Resources, and you click on that. And then you'll be given a list of different regions. You just click on your region, and you will be given a PDF of regional resources. And the things that are included in these regional resources are important record types and also strategies and resources for your specific region. On the important record types, they're divided into 3 columns. The first one is must know very well, then you've got good working knowledge and some familiarity. And all of these 3 columns are kind of based on the frequency with which you might use these in research in your region. For example, the records that are in the must know very well column are the most frequently used records in your region to solve research questions. And so you're going to need to know these very well. There will be the records that you go to first to try and figure out your research questions. In the good working knowledge, These records are used often, but they may not be the first records that you would seek. So, for example, depending on your region, maybe you don't use land records that often, like in this example from the England region. And so they're going to be something that you need to know how to use, but maybe it won't be the thing that you go to very first. Then in the third column, you have the records that you need some familiarity with. And in these, you need to be familiar with what these records contain and how to find them when you need them. So they're not going to be as frequently used as some of the other records in the different columns. And then in your strategies and resources that are specific to your region, make sure that you read over these and you know about the strategies and resources that are pointed out here. All right, a really good tool to help you learn more about your record types are the FamilySearch.org wiki. And you just search the wiki for your country or your region of interest, and it gives you these record types. And each one of these are clickable. You can click on each one of these, and there's a wiki article about these different kinds of record types. So it teaches you about the time periods, about why they were created. It teaches you how to use them, where to find them, what information they contain, and that's very valuable information when you're studying for this exam. All right. Also in your strategies and resources that's specific to your region, they may list prominent reference works. And these also, you may be directed as to where to find prominent reference works. So make sure you're aware of what is considered a prominent reference work for your region. As I said, you might be directed to another resource, and usually that's on the FamilySearch.org wiki. You put in the name of your state or country and for further reading and search for that on the FamilySearch wiki. And that should give you prominent reference works for that country or state or region. All right, so what is a prominent reference work? Prominent reference works are not record sets. They're not documents per se. They are things like maps, gazetteers, topographical dictionaries, lists of archives, societies, repositories, compiled lists of records or indexes, biography collections, directories, histories, guides. They're anything that is well known in your region for making your research more effective. It's something that genealogists in that region know about and use frequently. All right, so what skills are needed to pass the document interpretation section? And I've kind of combined these together to make about 4 areas. The first one is extraction, transcription, and abstraction. The second one is translation. The third one is identify, find, and work with documents and prominent reference works. And then the fourth one is research planning. And we're going to go through each of these, some of them quickly and some of them not so quickly, because we have a little bit more discussion on them. But so let's get started with the extraction, transcription, and abstraction. Like we said when we were describing some of the questions that might be asked, you will be given texts that are about 8 to 15 lines to transcribe. And what I would recommend is that you practice with different documents. A will is going to have different words than a tax document or a birth record or some other record. So you need to practice with the different wording that you see in different documents and transcribing those. That will help you to do it quickly if you're familiar with kind of the different elements of different documents. Also, there's an ICAPGen video on extraction, transcription, and abstraction, and it goes into a whole lot more detail on how to do this. And so I highly recommend that you take the time to watch that video as well. Moving on to translation. The text that you will be given or asked to translate will be the same ones that you transcribe. So you're going to be familiar with the text because you transcribed it. And then it's about 8 to 15 lines, and you just need to translate it into English. Also, check the ICAPGen website for the current language requirements for your region. Even some of the United States regions have a language requirement that you need to be familiar with certain language populations that were in those states. So make sure you check that website and so that you know what your language requirement is. All right, now identify, find, and work with documents. And this one we're going to go into a little more detail. There's 6 things that you should know about documents. Number 1 is know what each document looks like. Number 2, know how to find each record type, including online. Number 3, know time periods and date ranges covered. Number 4, know what information is found in each record type. Number 5, know why the document was created. And number 6, know what documents will help with certain research questions. All right, so number 1, let's go ahead and cover know what each document looks like. This is 3 different documents. We've got an attestation paper from the Canadian Forces. We have the United States of America naturalization papers, and then a death certificate. Some suggestions maybe to help you with this would be to keep a running list of records that you use. Save an example of each of these record types. And some ways that you can find some examples of these record types are lots of major websites have digital images now. Also the FamilySearch Wiki and Google. You can Google naturalization document, and you can sometimes find pictures of naturalization documents or whatever it is, the document that you're looking for. Also, know the different styles, layouts, and forms of different record types. For example, this is England example of baptism records. The church baptism records started in about 1538, give or take. Not, compliance wasn't really great at first, but the clerk would handwrite the baptism record, and so every clerk did it differently. There is somewhat different information depending on who was recording it. So they're handwritten, so they're similar that way, but as far as being in a specific format, they're not. After 1812, the church baptism records are on a pre-printed form. So everything becomes much more standardized after 1812. So when you know the different time periods or the different forms that these church baptisms come in, it kind of helps you be familiar with time periods and the information that might be available when you're looking at a baptism before 1812 versus after 1812. All right, number 2, know how to find each record type. Know which repositories hold each record type. Know the best ways to search online indexed records. All the big websites for your region, make sure you know how to search, like the best search techniques to get the records that you need. Learn how to access records online in online card catalogs. Sometimes records are much easier to find when you can narrow it down to a collection. So know how to find those collections online and search them that way. Know where to locate records if they're not indexed. And we're going to go over that toward the end, how to find original records. But be familiar with locating records when they're not indexed. How do I find records that are not indexed? Okay, know how to access records in archives and libraries. In your region, be familiar with the archives and libraries and what they hold. All right, number 3, know time periods and date ranges covered by each record type. Most record types only cover a specific time period. Different time periods may contain different information as well, so be familiar with the time periods and the date ranges that are covered by each record type. Here's an example with birth records. We talked about how church baptism records, they started in 1538, weren't really complied with until the 1590s or so. But by the time we got to 1837, civil registration begins. So now you've got the church keeping a baptism record, and you've got the country of England that is keeping a civil record as well. So now you've got 2 ways that you could find vital records. Sometimes it overlaps and sometimes it doesn't. So be familiar with the different options for different time periods and what date ranges they cover. All right, number 4, know what information can be found in each record type. We're going to just continue with the example of church records. So church records are a record type, but within church records you have baptisms, marriages, and burials. So you need to know if I'm looking in church records, am I looking for a baptism, marriage, or burial, and what kind of information can be found for each of those. So for example, in a baptism record, you may find the name of the child, the date of the baptism, and the name of the parents. In a marriage record, you may find out the name of the bride and groom, their residences, the father's names, witnesses' names, etc. In a burial record, you'll mostly find just the name of the deceased and the date of the burial. Number 5, know why each record type was created. This can be just as important as what the document says. So you need to know who created it and for what purpose and how accurate is the information. Were they doing this to count people? Were they doing this to tax people? Were they doing this just to record an event? You know, why was it being created? Who was creating it? And here's an example. And this one is another England example. Sorry that I'm sticking to my specialty, I guess. But in England, each parish was responsible for taking care of their own poor. And parishes did not want to end up paying for somebody who was just traveling through. So they created settlement papers. And when somebody had this document, it let other parishes know that if they fell on hard times, their parish would take care of them financially, that they could then go and look for work in other places or move somewhere else, and that parish wouldn't kick them out because they would possibly fall on them for financial support if they had hard times. Also, if a girl got pregnant, the parish didn't want to have to support her and the child. So they would make her name who the father was, and then they would put him under bond, requiring him to pay for the support of the child. So we have 2 things that have stemmed out of the desire or the requirement for parishes to take care of their own poor, and ways to make it more fair, ways to make sure the parish didn't have too much of the burden paying for people who were just passing through. So most records have a story behind them, and they were created for a reason, and so learning that reason can help you understand the information given in the records better. All right, number 6, know what documents will best help with certain research questions. So now we're getting into research planning knowledge a little bit here. So for example, if I'm looking for a maiden name, I'm going to go find our marriage record. If I'm looking for siblings to my person, then I might go look at census records. If I need a birth date or place, maybe a church record or a birth certificate. If I'm looking for death, I'm looking for a death certificate or cemetery records. So you need to know what documents are going to best help answer research questions. All right, now moving on to research planning. The big question that we're trying to answer here are, what are the most likely records in this region at this time period to contain the information needed? So some tips for research planning are: know your record types for your region really well. There's the FamilySearch.org record finder that can be a good tool as well, and we will go over that in just a minute. There's also an ICAPGen video on research planning, and it goes into a lot more detail, so I highly recommend that you watch that one. There's also an ICAPGen video on creating a research reference guide, so that can help you accumulate methodologies and be familiar with your record types so that you're prepared for the exam. All right, now the FamilySearch.org Wiki record finder. The way that you find the record finder for your country is just type in Google or whatever search engine, FamilySearch.org, and then the name of your country, and then record finder. And it will pull up the information that they have supplied on FamilySearch Wiki for each country. And they kind of this little chart in 3 columns. So for example, if I wanted to know the birth date of somebody, this record finder tells me that first I need to look in vital records, church records, Bible records, and then I can search cemeteries, obituaries, and censuses. And the great thing about the record finder is it's specific to your region of interest, and it also kind of opens up your mind to some other possibilities. Maybe I've already checked vital records and didn't find anything. Well, what else could I check? And this kind of helps you come up with some ideas. All right, you could also consider creating your own table as you're putting together your research reference guide. This one is an example from Julie Stoddard, and she put together this chart. At the top it says record type and methodology, and then the next column is what or who can I find, and then the next column is where can I find the records and what dates do they cover. And you could put together, for your own region, take each of the important record types and put together a table that is going to help you figure out the best resources or best methodologies to follow. All right. Now, as we wrap up this video, I just want to go over finding clues in documents. And let's see, often our success in solving difficult research questions is being able to see and use all the clues that can be found in a document. So I just wanted to point out the importance of always looking at the original document. And I have a couple of examples of this. First of all, we have this index entry from FamilySearch.org. This is a United States Census record from 1900 for Rebecca T. Orton. This index record is very good. It gives us a lot of information. It tells us her name, the name of her parents, the name of her siblings, her place of birth, her age, and her relationship to the head of household. So that's quite a bit of information. That might be enough to solve our research question. However, if we click on View the Original Document and we take a look at the original 1900 census, her family is down here at the bottom. And I know you can't see it, it's really small, but it gives us a lot more information than that index entry did. And here's some of the new clues that we learned. There is a column that is for years married. So if we're looking for their marriage record, the marriage record of her parents, now we have a time period in which to look. There's a column next to that for the number of children that have been born to this couple, and next to that is the number of children who are alive. And in this example, there is 10 children that were born and 10 that are alive. There's also 10 children listed on this census record. So as of 1900, I know I have all of the children. However, if it said that there was 12 children born to this couple and only 10 are alive, then I would start looking for two children, maybe in cemetery records or maybe, you know, burial records or something like that, because I know now that I am missing two of their children. There's also a column a little farther over about the date of naturalization. Now, this is a really good piece of information if you don't know a specific place that your ancestor came from. If you can find that naturalization record, it will tell you most of the time where they came from and be a little bit more specific than maybe the census record will be. It also gives his occupation. Occupations are an identifier, and it can help you separate out people who maybe have the same name in the same town, and that can be very helpful information. It also gives the birthplace of his parents. It may not be really specific, but it can sometimes give you an idea where to look for his birth record or for his parents' marriage, etc. So all of those extra clues come from really looking at and reading the original record. Okay, now we have an index record from Ancestry.com. This is a church baptism record from Norfolk, England for Sarah Ann Minns. Now this index record is fabulous. Usually a baptism record from England does not give the date of birth, but in this one it gives her birth date, and it gives her baptism date, her place of baptism, and the name of her father and the name of her mother. Now, just looking at the name of her mother quickly, I may think that Sarah Blythe Minns' maiden name might be Blythe, that maybe when they indexed it, they put that in there on mistake or something like that. When I looked at the original record, I get way more information about Sarah. Sarah Blythe, late Doe spinster. So what this means, this little tiny clue, means that she was late Doe, which means she used to be called Doe. That's her maiden name. And the fact that she was a spinster means that this is her first marriage. So that's a lot of great information. Now I can go and find Sarah Blythe Doe in the birth records because I know her maiden name now. This also tells us their residence. And it says this parish, which was St. George at Colgate. In other records, it may tell me that they lived in a town one or two parishes over, but they come here to baptize their children. So knowing their residence is great information. It also tells the occupation of her father. So again, that's an identifier, and that can help us separate out the same name people, or we can follow him through other records that state his occupation. And last, it gives the name of the clergyman who did the baptism. All right, so we are really lucky because quite often now the digital image of a record will be attached to the index entry. So that makes it really easy. If you just click on the image and take the time to read it, you can learn all these clues, and it really doesn't take you a lot of extra time to go find the original. However, as we've seen from the difference between the index entry and the original, it really does help you in your research to always look at the original. So we always want to seek out the original, even if it's a little bit of work to get there. And one of the ways that you can do that, if you are given an index entry on a website and you want to find the original, quite often they will have a source citation. So for Sarah Ann Minns' birth record, the source citation says this record came from the Norfolk Record Office in Norfolk, England. And then it gives a reference, a number reference. And so I can now go to the Norfolk Record Office website and order a copy of this document if I wish to. Quite often, that source citation will have a family history library microfilm number. And if you go to the Family History Library or the FamilySearch catalog, you can look up this source by the film or fish number. You can also look for documents on card catalogs by place by collection title or subject. And you want to always check card catalogs for browsable collections that have not been indexed yet, because they may have the record set that you need and you can't search for it. All right, so finally, if you cannot find your record that you are looking for in online websites, and you've checked the family history library and they don't have the film that you need, then you can go to archives and repositories within your region and search quite often on their card catalogs, on their websites, and you can see what collections they hold. Some of them are still not online, and so you may have to contact them through email or through snail mail. But it's worth the effort to get the original record to find out what other clues and information you can find out about the family that you're researching. All right, so that brings us to the end of this video presentation on document interpretation, on the document interpretation section of the Level 2 exam. And I really hope that this information is helpful to you as you prepare for accreditation. My name is Mindy Taylor. Thanks for watching.